She deftly undid the belt and then unzipped him as quickly as he could have done it himself. "I want to watch the movie," she said breathlessly, "but I want you to." The frustration was evident in her face and voice. Brad chuckled and sat on the couch. Laying on his left side hard against the back cushions, he motioned her down in front of him. Ashley lay down and promptly threw her right leg over her husband's body and braced it up on the back of the sofa. "Go ahead," she whispered. "You don't want me to." "Honey, if I was any more ready, well, I don't know what," Ashley said. "Just do it, sugar," she said firmly. "Ash, do you see the remote?" he asked, annoyed he couldn't locate it. Ashley raised her head from where it was pillowed on Brad's left arm. "On the floor, there," she said and pointed. Brad looked. It was too far for him to reach. "I got it," Ashley said quickly. "Okay, you're in charge of starting, stopping, instant replays, slow motion, and fast-forwarding through the uninteresting parts, woman," Brad joked. "Think you can handle all that?" "Watch me," Ashley retorted. "You think you gotta rank amateur here, or something, buddy?" She giggled as Brad sniffed derisively. "Then let's get going," Brad urged. The movie lasted only about an hour. They made remarks to each other the whole time, egging each other on as they derided some of the actors in the video. "I'll go," Ashley said between gasps. She grabbed a thin blanket from behind the far end of the couch and wrapped it around her as best she could. She staggered up the stairs, leaving Brad to recover as best he could. When he could breathe, Brad took the DVD out of the player and turned off the TV and all the lights. He carried all their clothing upstairs, dropped it near their closets, and made his way into the bath. "I told you," Ashley said, pretending to admonish her husband when she joined him in the shower a few moments later. She wound her arms around his back and rested her head between his shoulder blades. "Well," Brad protested teasingly, "oh, if you didn't scream like a banshee, we wouldn't have these problems." They both chuckled tiredly. "You're the one who makes me," Ashley retorted. "Want me to stop?" Brad teased. "Not on your life," Ashley shot back. I'm so tired," she said. They finished their shower and fell into bed. "Honey," Ashley murmured. Her head was pillowed on her husband's shoulder and it muffled her voice slightly. Brad whispered. "You know what you said one time, before we got married, about you felt like you were competing with the guys in the lifestyle?" Brad choked out a noncommittal grunt. "Well, my darling lover husband, nobody ever satisfied me like you do," as she told him, patting his chest reassuringly. "You don't have anything to worry about, honey," as she said. Her voice trailed off and her breathing became deep and steady. "But I do worry," Brad whispered into the dark. "They're always right behind me, waiting for me to screw up just once." "Hey, hon," Brad said when Ashley answered her cell phone. "Hi, baby," she replied. "We on for the River City tonight, lover?" Brad asked. River City, it was short for a River City pub. It was a high-end nightclub they'd been hitting every few weeks on Saturday night for a good 3 months. They'd found it was an excellent place for one or the other to find someone to flirt with. "Oh yeah," Ashley shot back. "Wouldn't miss it. I'm just pissed it's your night to be rescued and I have to be the rescuer," as she added in a teasing tone. It was the game they played. One or the other would find someone in a club to flirt with, and the more outrageously they did it, the better. The flirting was allowed to continue to the point where the selected individual was ready to leave with either Ashley or Brad. When they sensed the right time had arrived, a signal was passed to the designated rescuer who galloped into the rescue, pretending to be a betrayed husband or wife. It was effective every time. Then, when they got home, they pretended the rescued one actually had gone with that other person. It led to many evenings of enthusiastic role-playing and long hours of you-know-what. It was frequently boosted by watching DVDs Brad brought home from Fred's adult bookstore. Fred's employees knew Brad well now and often put aside a copy of the latest new amateur movie for him to pick up when he could. A girl there, her hair gelled into a hard punk style, was Brad's advisor on various toys for sale in the store. Based on her recommendations, Brad had made a number of purchases and was just waiting for the right opportunity to pull them out of the hidden corner of his closet. "Tough," Brad told his wife without the slightest hint of sympathy in his tone of voice. He chuckled. "You get your turn when we go to the carousel next time." "I know," Ashley sighed. "It's just that it's so long." Brad laughed. "Yeah, it's been almost a week and a half since your last time," he said without sympathy. "Well," Ashley said, almost whining. "Sometimes it's really boring, you know?" "No, I haven't got there yet," Brad replied. "I'm having a hell of a good time and I thought you were too," he said. "I know," Ashley said quickly. Me too, but we could do something else, you know. What? Brad asked flatly. The silence threatened to lengthen interminably. Oh, I don't know, Ashley said at last. Just something. Well, if you think of something within the rules we agreed to, you let me know. Okay? Heck, if you can think of something more exciting, I want to hear it. Anyway, Brad said before Ashley could speak, "Oh, I'm late for the gym, and the darn personal trainer Reed set me up with will charge me just the same as if I was on time. I think I need to work off a couple more ounces so I'll fit in those new pants, you know? If you keep buying me tighter and tighter ones, I'm going to have to stop wearing underwear." He chuckled. "I will if you will," Ashley said, after a small pause. Her voice was excited again. She loved ratcheting things up. Brad laughed again. "I'll think about it. I'll let you know." "Okay." Ashley breathed into the phone. "We'll have a good time tonight," as she cooed. "Count on it," Brad said. "Bye, darling. Love you." "Love you," Ashley responded. "Bye." "Hun?" Brad said with an odd note in his voice. "What, baby?" Ashley answered. She was looking all around the dim nightclub, watching for a young woman suitable for her husband to approach and chat up. Brad was picky. The woman had to be reasonably attractive and, more important, had to have a reasonably nice body. It seemed the more obsessive Brad became with working out, the less inclined he was to even glance at women who didn't keep themselves in shape. "You see that girl at the bar over there under the funny-looking chandelier? See her?" "No." "Oh, the blonde with that red, off-the-shoulder thing on?" Brad stalled. He hadn't gotten around to looking at what the woman wore. "Yeah, that's her. She look familiar to you?" Ashley peered at the girl for a long moment. "No, I don't think so. Have we gamed her before or something?" "Nah. Is that a pageboy hairstyle like she's wearing her hair? Looks like one. See where it kinda molds her head, and it's pretty short and it curves in right under her jaw and stuff." Well yeah, I guess," Ashley responded, giving her husband a strange look. She hadn't been aware he'd ever heard the term the pageboy, or much less knew what the hairstyle looked like. "Close enough, anyway," as she added. "'Kay," Brad said distractedly, "but she doesn't look familiar to you, blonde girl with a pageboy kinda hairdo, a little short, looks kinda plump in her clothes. You ever see anyone like her before?" "I don't think so," Ashley said after studying the woman at length. "Anyway, she doesn't look like she's here with a boyfriend or husband. Are you changing the rules back?" as she asked. She was getting a little irritated. The game had been altered slightly. Because both of them liked the attention a new person showered on them, they'd begun locating couples to tease and play with. Brad would chat up the woman and Ashley would do her best to monopolize the attention of the woman's date or husband. Brad and Ashley would then stage an argument late in the evening and both would storm out, tossing apologies back to the suddenly deserted couple. When they got home, Brad would become the man Ashley had been flirting with and Ashley did everything she could to mimic the girl. "No," Brad said, slowly. A man coming in the entrance had just joined the woman. They kissed and the girl handed the new arrival a drink she'd already ordered. "You don't think you've seen her before, or the guy with her?" "No," Ashley said after a perfunctory glance. "What are you getting at, Brad?" as she asked impatiently. "I wish you wouldn't be so mysterious sometimes." Brad leaned close to whisper in her ear. "That movie we saw last week? Rob and Carrie and Thad and Alicia, or something like that," he prompted his wife. "Remember?" Ashley turned back to the pair and watched as the pair looked around for a table. The waitress shrugged her shoulders at a question from the guy. The room was already packed with several clumps of tables pushed together for large parties already in progress. "Oh my God," Ashley breathed. "You don't think?" "I don't know," Brad answered. "But how about them anyway, even if they aren't?" he asked. "To play with this evening," he said almost impatiently. "What do you think?" Ashley nodded slowly and Brad was out of his chair in an instant. In a moment, he was halfway across the room and quickly approaching the couple. He was eager to get to them before someone else did. Ashley watched as Brad made his offer. He was charming and engaging even way over there. He pointed her way and Ashley waved. The couple glanced at each other and turned back to Brad nodding. They were all smiles. The guy gathered up their drinks and napkins so Brad offered his arm to the little blonde after bowing gallantly. Ashley couldn't hear the woman's chuckle, but she could see the big grin Brad got as a reward. Ashley was suddenly not certain she liked this. Brad was too enthusiastic lately about this game and disturbingly eager to invite this couple into it. The idea the usual delicious excitement might suddenly desert her at the last moment just when they were beginning to play their flirting game with another couple had never occurred to her. It was unsettling. Then they were there in front of her and Brad was introducing them. The man, Carson was his name, was good-looking, Ashley thought. Things would be all right. 2 hours later, Brad sat at the table with Carson's wife, Leanne, while Ashley danced with Carson. Brad pretended to study the short blonde woman. She smiled, enjoying his interest. "So have you heard from Thad and Alicia lately?" he asked casually. Leanne looked at him blankly for a moment. After 2 hours of dancing and drinking, Brad had caught her off guard. Even in the dim club, Brad could see her embarrassed expression. He watched the redness climb from her upper chest to engulf her ears and cheeks. "Oh, God," she moaned. "They never told us that thing would be distributed locally." "Well, I think you gave a very good performance," Brad said with a smile. Especially when he cut himself off before identifying the section he had in mind. "Actually, you seemed very enthusiastic all the way through, very impressive," he complimented Leanne. She smiled tentatively, then more confidently. "Did you really?" she asked. Brad nodded. "Cross my heart," he said. Seconds later, Carson was sliding into the seat beside his wife. Ashley was there for only an instant. She snatched up her purse and smiled prettily, saying she had to make a quick trip to the little girl's room. Brad smiled in return and returned his attention to the woman and her husband. They talked, but not about the movie Leanne and her husband had starred in. Leanne made one attempt to bring it up, but Carson wasn't listening. He watched for Ashley's return, suppressing an obvious excited anticipation. "Baby," Ashley said when she did return a few minutes later. Honey, the babysitter called and Kathy is croupy again and Cindy had an accident." It was their signal tonight. The game had gone on long enough and the other side had advanced too far into Brad and Ashley's game. It was time to end it and get away. "Oh, damn," Brad said in a concerned voice. "I figured. Well, I guess it doesn't matter," he said with a loud sigh. "Listen, folks," he said as he stood up. "Oh, it was great meeting you, really. I'm sorry we have to go, but well, that's what you get when you have kids, huh? Y'all take care and have a good time the rest of the evening, okay?" Ashley added some words to Brad's, but in seconds, they had made their break from the table and were well on their way out the door. In their car, Brad listened as Ashley explained the sudden need to end the entertainment early. It seemed Carson had asked if she and Brad would like to come home with them. Carson wanted to get to know her better. Ashley said she didn't think Brad was ready for that yet. Brad caught the final yet, but he carefully suppressed a reaction. He understood where the conversation would lead if he did, and he wasn't ready for that discussion. Instead, he told her their suspicion the couple were actors in an amateur porn movie was correct. He went on and on about that, smothering Ashley's half-hearted and veiled attempt to move the talk back to something she wanted to go over, something she'd promised Brad she'd never consider again. They decided to watch the movie again, the one that Leanne and Carson had been in. It seemed a natural thing to do, and it was effective. Brad touched the button to pause the movie. I have something," he said tentatively. "I know," Ashley said with a giggle. They were laying in their normal position on the couch. "Well, yeah, that too," Brad answered. "But I thought maybe, well, I'll just blurt it out and you go ahead and slap the S out of me if you don't like it. Okay?" Retrieving a plain plastic shopping bag, he came back to the couch. What was inside had been strongly recommended by the punk girl in Fred's adult bookstore. Ashley sat up, intrigued at the sight of the tangle of slender straps Brad removed from the sack. She couldn't see what it was with just the light from the TV, but she was usually ready for anything new. Brad sat down, nervously playing with the object. Ashley took the bag from his unresisting fingers and looked inside. She looked at Brad and then the straps he was untangling. "Oh," as she said with surprise. Her eyes widened and she giggled as she recognized what her husband had brought home. "Wow, honey," as she added. "It's a double harness thing," Brad explained. Ashley patted her husband's forearm. "I know what it is," as she said distractedly. She'd never dreamed Brad would suggest using a toy like this. It was something new and showed Brad was willing to add another facet to their life. "I figured what they do next in the movie and I thought if..." "Yeah," Ashley breathed softly, going over the movie in her mind. "I can see." Ashley with barely restrained enthusiasm in her voice. She took the harness out of her husband's uncertain hands and twisted it into its proper arrangement in a few seconds. "Stand up," as she ordered. "Did you put batteries?" "Yeah, you did," as she remarked. "Lover," Ashley asked Brad when they tumbled into bed. "Oh, it's a darn good thing Dad has the kids this weekend. We would never have been able to explain all that downstairs if a couple of curious young ladies had come down to see what was happening, would we?" "God, no," Brad answered with feeling. "It would have scarred them for life." Ashley stirred. Well, maybe not quite that bad, as she said almost defensively. She giggled. But we'd have been answering questions for a month. Brad chuckled. At least. Brad, honey, Ashley asked drowsily, or what do you have for me next? She was nearly asleep. Oh, I have something in mind, Brad assured her, but you'll have to wait for our next date night to find out what, he said teasingly. Ashley rolled over, fully awake and eager to hear what was next in their life. Tell me, she demanded. Brad wouldn't. When she gave up and rolled back over, Brad lay unsleeping. His wife had promised, but she was slowly and carefully pressuring to get back into swinging. He knew nothing else would satisfy her. No matter how many fantasies they explored, no matter how many movies, toys, or new positions, it would never be enough. Damn you, he whispered to the shadows in the room. You think you're winning, but I won't let you. You hear me? I won't let you. I have to go potty, Ashley said firmly. Put that thing in your pocket and leave it alone till I get back, husband, dear, as she added. Oh, Brad replied, pretending to complain. Oh, I never have any fun. He grinned happily. She laughed. He was actually being very, very bad and she loved it. Brad had surprised her with the remote control an hour before they left the house for this date night. She thought it was going to be a normal dinner and then a movie in the new theater in the mall, but it was turning out to be anything but routine. She sighed, grateful for the rest. Brad had been thumbing the button to activate it, until she got used to the thing. When Brad pushed the button for the first time in the car, she'd yelped in surprise and bucked against the seatbelt. Brad had cracked up. Since walking into the restaurant, he'd agreed to trigger the thing only once in any 2-minute period, but he refused to tell her when the period was beginning. Once, he buzzed her, waited for only a second or two, and then did it again. Ash could only endure. She was enormously turned on, though. She knew they weren't going to a movie theater tonight. Brad had let her know he'd gotten a DVD movie for their private viewing. It was a very special one, he said. One that Fred himself had urged Brad take home. She sighed when the stall door closed and she could perch herself on the toilet. She decided to wash the thing off. It would only take a moment and she was alone in the restroom. When the short brunette girl came out, Ashley was frozen into place. When the young woman chuckled, Ashley blushed a dark red and scrambled to push the toy. She couldn't face the woman at first. How come yours is blue and mine is pink? The brunette asked suddenly. Without warning, she blushed as deeply as Ashley had. Oh geez, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Ashley laughed and the embarrassment was over for both of them. You have one too? Ashley inquired. The girl nodded. There's something else, aren't they? Ashley continued, thinking to make conversation for a moment while she washed up. Oh yeah, the girl replied enthusiastically. I know what you mean, Ashley said, agreeing with the happy woman and turned to the sinks to wash up. Wait, Ashley said after a moment. You mean you have one right now too? She asked. The young woman nodded. Both of us have perverts for husbands, huh? She asked. They laughed together. Ain't it great? Ashley said. They laughed again. Ashley finished drying her hands, waved a hand at the other woman and turned to leave. She stopped with her hand on the door handle. She turned around. Ashley, she said succinctly, holding out her hand to the other woman. Janie, returned the short young woman. Nice to meet ya, she added. Yeah, Ashley replied. Brad's my husband, gave blood 2 weeks ago and had to have a test before we did it. We don't have anything. Confused, Janie nodded. Spurred to answer by Ashley's questioning expression, she hurried to add, Connor and I are in the Army. At Fort Sam? We get tested regularly and it's always negative, as she said. Yeast infection? Anything? Ashley demanded. Janie shook her head. Ashley stood grinning, looking into all corners of the room before coming back to Janie. Sugar. Ashley told the young woman, how would you like to play a little joke on those men of ours? 5 minutes later, Ashley sat back down with her husband. She'd remained standing for a long moment so Janie could locate her, and vice versa. Sitting down, Ashley had to crane her neck and stretch her body up as high as she could. Janie was just barely visible over there. Ashley nodded and waited. The remote-controlled toy sprang into life, making Ashley shudder with pleasure. She did what she could to ignore it. She waved to Janie and saw the other woman nod. Hit it, lover, Ashley told Brad. I want to feel a nice long one, okay? Brad grinned broadly and put his hand in his suit coat pocket. Ashley felt nothing, but she saw Janie's hand fly up across the room. Ashley moaned just loud enough for Brad to hear, though she actually felt nothing. Janie waved energetically and then subsided back into her seat. What was that all about? Brad asked curiously. Just someone I met in the little girl's room, Ashley told him. We talked for a bit, as she added. Brad shrugged. That was something women did, damned if he knew why. Ashley picked up her fork to finish the last few bites of lobster, but the fork skittered across the plate. She yelped in surprise. She hadn't expected the sudden surge. Brad looked quickly up at her. Seeing the signs Ashley had gotten a quick buzz, he frowned and checked the remote in his pocket. It seemed to be okay. Experimentally, he pressed the button. Ashley closed her eyes a bit tardily, Brad thought, and clenched her jaws tight. A gasp in the middle distance and a quick bark of laughter distracted him but didn't pay it much attention. He thumbed the button again. Ung. Ashley grunted. Hey, remember our agreement? She protested. It didn't seem like her heart was in it, though. There was a sudden flurry of activity over there where a pretty brunette was frantically mopping up a spilled glass of water. Her date, or whatever he was signaling for their waitress. Brad shrugged. It had happened to him more than once and would again if he wasn't careful. He reached out and set his own water glass well away from where his sleeve might bump it. So we had to make sure they weren't on the same radio frequency or anything like that, Janie laughed. And we had to be in range of each other, but it all worked out. She and Ashley giggled like schoolgirls and leaned in toward each other to touch their foreheads together. Brad looked at the man who'd introduced himself as Connor. Ashley had insisted she and Brad go over to the other couple's table for a quick drink before they left. Brad and Connor both had been mystified with their wives' strange behavior, but now it was all explained. Brad looked at the two laughing women and shook his head. He had an idea. He glanced again at the women and stealthily pulled the remote control from his pocket and held it up high enough for Connor to see. The other man caught on quickly and slipped his out too. 1, 2, 3. Brad mouthed. Both men pushed down the buttons on the device in their hands and held the button down. Janie and Ashley's bodies jerked almost in unison. Their feet scrambled for purchase on the floor. Brad and Connor let up on their buttons, then thumbed them again. The women, not even partially recovered yet, were beset with tremors again. God damn it, Ashley said, not quite under her breath. Give me that. She took it from Brad's hand. He didn't really try to keep it. Her mistake was made obvious when she contorted her body again. The remote control for Ashley was in Connor's hands. Janie snatched that one away from Connor a moment later. 10 minutes into a conversation on toys and their merits versus men, Janie got a mischievous look on her face. She looked at Ashley, lifted the control she held, and pressed the button to activate it. In self-defense, Ashley punched the button on her controller and the two girls danced and shuddered on their chairs. I don't know when I've had more fun, Janie remarked as the two couples walked slowly into the parking lot. Well, at least with my clothes on anyway. She and Ashley giggled happily as they walked arm in arm, half leaning on each other so they could stay on their feet. They both had had a few too many drinks. Their husbands were intoxicated with the idea. I was going to say, Connor remarked. I distinctly recall any number of occasions when you've had a lot of fun, he said suggestively. Janie laughed. The two couples strolled toward the far eastern edge of the restaurant's parking lot. Since they'd arrived at nearly the same time, it wasn't too surprising they'd parked near each other. They got to Brad and Ashley's car first and stood talking for a long moment. Neither couple really cared to end the evening. Finally, Connor held his hand up for Brad to shake, and the four got ready to part. Then Janie giggled. Aren't you guys forgetting something? She asked. Brad and Connor looked at each other and shrugged. Silly men, Janie said happily. Connor, dear, Ashley has your thing, and I've got Brad's thing. She chuckled at herself. Yeah, Ashley said, trying to concentrate through her alcoholic haze. Well, we can wash them off and bring them back. We could meet for lunch tomorrow or something, Janie, Ashley said at last. Nope, Janie said with a drunk's perfect self-possession. I want you to get it out of now, she announced in a loud voice. She put her hands on Connor's chest.